This is Turn 1 Thoughtseize. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Zach.
And this is episode 83, Team Modern Prep, preparing you to go 8-1 day one, probably.
Come on, man! Bring it!
I mean, let's be realistic. Like, if you're even if you're going on a tear, like, you're probably gonna give up on loss.
I mean, we're giving you the tools to win the GP. How about that?
There you go. I like that.
What you do with them is your call, but we'll provide you the tools.
Excellent. See? That's why I pay you the big bucks. Last time we talked a little bit about the changes to the Patreon. I have enacted those changes to the Patreon, or at least some of them, even though I said they weren't going to go into effect until August 1st. They went into effect now. So if you are a current $1 or higher subscriber and you did not previously have access to the Discord, you now have access to the Discord. So just check the Patreon feed for the link. If you have trouble finding it for some reason, send me a message either there or on Twitter. I was going to say send me a message on Discord, but you can't do that, can you?
No. Well, I can. I could message you on Discord.
You could message me on Discord. So yeah, Twitter, email, thoughtseize@gmail.com, or whomst ever you want to get a hold of me. Let me know and I can send you a link. And then you can come in and see all of the wonderful foils and discussion. And one of our patrons, I believe, is whitebordering a Liliana the Veil right now. So,
it hurts. It hurts. I'm sure some people love it, but that hurts me, man.
Here's the thing, right? If you're never going to sell it, then it's worth whatever you want it to be worth.
No, I mean, that's fair, and it's their call, and I'm sure they like it. But when I look at it, I'm in pain.
Fair.
It hurts me.
It is a deck that is designed to tilt people, so I think that is certainly like a real commitment.
Oh, it is. No, I mean it is effective too, because I would be losing my mind playing against whiteboarded 8-rack. No, why? Why did you do this? They were so good looking.
They were. Many of them were good looking. Some of them were average looking. I wish we get new art for some of the cards in it, but regardless of which. Shout out to our new patrons, Emma and Matt. Thank you so much. Also, we had some corrections and addenda. I think I'm going to start doing these in the beginning of the episode. The Reddit post for the last episode was amazing. Everybody in it was civil and had like constructive discussions, and a ton of people saw it. We had a very good upvote ratio, so I appreciate that. So if you are hearing this because of that, welcome. I've been putting up a page, with the exception of one that I forgot for reasons. I don't remember what the reason was, but every time we put out an episode, when it goes up in all the places, I'll put up a Reddit post for it so that people can sort of chitty chat about what we talked about. And as is sometimes the case, we will make mistakes and we will address them herein. So, corrections and addenda to the last episode. Desecrated Tomb, we talked about getting multiple bats on like a surgical extraction or a rest in peace. And after consulting with Aaron Campbell, Queen of Dredge, and also a number of judges on Twitter, we have determined that because of the way it is worded, or because of the way that the spells resolve, it is a single event, so Desecrated Tomb only sees it once, and so you only get one bat. You get like a constellation bat for both of those scenarios. But with Bloodghast, or Prized Amalgam, or whatever, each one of the creatures entering the battlefield is its own event, so you would get a bat for each one of those. So think about that the next time you are bat shopping.
Absolutely. And I made a statement last time that Stanislav Sivka's Pro Tour winning Eggs deck played the card Clan Ironworks in it. It did not. It was a Lotus Bloom deck relying upon tutoring for Lotus Bloom, although there were versions of the deck playing Karkland Ironworks.
Just not the one that won.
Yeah, not the one that won.
Not his specific one.
Yep, so that was wrong, but our points on Karkland Ironworks stand.
Yeah, strong agree. You need to be able to disrupt their plan and then kill them as quickly as humanly possible.
Well, let's get into Philly, because I have some points about Karkland from Philly.
Excellent. So, for me, personally, Philly was a almost unqualified disaster. I forgot a bunch of cards at home that I then had to rebuy. I went 0-4 in my event.
Big yikes.
Losing to like every tier 3 all-star deck that you can imagine. And I was just like, so what I wanted was more of a, like, more time to socialize, and there was none. Because they're just like, that's not what the event is for. So I guess some of it was expectation on my part that was sort of misapplied, because like when I got there, it was like half an hour into round 2 or whatever. So like everybody was busy. So like you can't really go like talk to people and hang out because everybody's busy. And then because
SCGs are definitely different than GPs in that fashion.
So there's not enough downtime between the rounds because so many people are playing KCI and it's going to time.
Correct. Also, team events are rougher for that because it's like,
sure.
Like everyone is tied to the slowest player on their team, essentially. So it's just like there is just way less downtime for actual players in the event.
Yes. Also, when I left in the morning to go to the venue, I came out. I stayed with my friends Izzy and Veronica. Thank you so much for putting me up for the weekend. And it was great to see them. So no judgment on anything that happened outside of everything that happened outside of the convention center was great. When I came outside, I go to the parking lot, I get in my car, and there is a moving van or a furniture delivery van parked directly in, like, blocking the only exit to the parking lot. Just sitting there, hazard lights on, back door open, nobody around. So I got in my car and waited for the nice gentleman to deliver the couch that they had come to deliver, and then move their truck. And then I headed off to the venue where I got to say a bunch of sort of quick hellos, have some chit-chats, play some rounds, a very nice lunch with Dick's, and then I went home, or I went to back to the place that I was staying, and I thought about how poorly my deck did, and I was like, do I really want this, just keep bashing my head against this particular wall? The answer turned out to be no, so I got up and I went home. And I had a very nice rest of my weekend. And I stand behind that choice. I think I was just like, I was in such a like tilty, bad mood. Like I was not going to be good company no matter what. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go home, take a nap, relax, think about the mistakes. Think about how much land destruction I played against, because it was borderline irresponsible for the people that I was playing against to be playing as much land destruction as they were.
Hey, you put Tron lands in your deck. You signed up for that.
No, I did, but I was not expecting people to have like 7 sideboard slots dedicated just to land destruction.
Welcome to Tron, man. I played it at the Envy. It was brutal.
I was just like, I'm like, how do you beat other decks? Like, what is your plan against anybody that just doesn't care? That you have like 4 Fulminator Mages and 4 Molten Rains. Like I played against somebody that had 4 Fulminator Mages, at least 3 Molten Rains, and at least 1 Alpine Moon that I saw, but my suspicion is they probably had more than 1. That is too much. It's too much going on. Especially when you have Kolaghan's Command. And let me tell you, Kolaghan's Command, blow up your Crucible of Worlds, get back my Fulminator Mage, blow up your land, is a very strong line of play against Tron. So don't ever let anybody tell you that Jund is 0% against Tron. That's only true pre-board.
That's just not true at all anymore, actually.
So there you go, yes.
When I was testing Tron, actually, I found I was losing to Jund more often than like most other decks. And it's like I still felt favored against Jund, but the days of like 90-10 are long gone. You're like 55-45 now. Yeah,
because I got rolled, and it was very unpleasant. Yep. So, the event itself had a lot of Tron, at the top tables. Tron, Jeskai, Blue Red Storm, Amulet, Death Shadow, Grixis Control,
Corey Burkhart special
with no Death Shadow. Oh boy, this is like Grixis Control, like
yeah, it's the Corey Burkhart special.
Okay,
I know the guy playing it, Steve. I think his name is Kriziak.
Kriziak, yeah.
He's a Corey Burkhart disciple, if you will. Fair. Great player. Just goes to the 8 command school of magic.
Fair. I mean, it seems to work, right? 4 Cryptic Command, 4 Kolaghan's Command, and then just fill in the rest.
Hey, definitely worked for him, and always happy to see Snapcaster Cryptic Command decks do well. So good work there.
So. Yeah, but still some Teferis. The Terminus is still happening, which is just still mind-boggling to me. But
true.
Anyways,
before we move past Philly, though, I'd like to touch on
definitely.
For a second. Do it. So yeah, I actually played in the main event, and we took 3 tough losses right at the beginning of the event. So we started 1-3. 2 of our losses were actually to teams that made the top 8. So, I mean, that's tough, right? When you play 2 very good teams like that early. But what are you going to do? We didn't end up day 2ing. The cut was 6-2-1. We went 6-3. And I do feel like a lot of it was my fault. I kind of let my team down. I was playing Legacy, and my deck was great last format. I didn't update my deck enough for the legacy rotations. Deathray Shaman and Gitaxian Probe got banned out of that format. Kind of threw the format on its ear for a second. There's a lot of changes. I was kind of playing an outdated list. Thought it would still be okay. Turned out it just wasn't very well positioned, and I let my teammates down. But my modern seat was playing KCI, and he was absolutely crushing it. And I had watched him test KCI. And I thought the deck was really good. And he was a little nervous because he wasn't that prepared with the deck. He thought he knew what was going on, but he really had just picked up KCI 2 weeks before. And oh my gosh, he was just destroying people. All of his losses were his own fault, like actual game losses. Almost every single one was his own fault to, misplaying or whatnot. But then pretty much, I looked over so many times. It was like, I remember one match in particular, I'm looking over, I was like, all right, he's definitely going to lose. I need to win. And it's like he's playing as blue-white control, and the blue-white control player has Stony Silence and Rest in Peace in play, and he's holding up a counter spell. Like, literally, just pass with like a Cryptic Command up. And then I look back to my match, play a turn, look back over, and my KCI opponent is comboing off in that same game. And I'm like, what the heck happened? How? He's like, oh, well, I just Nature's Claim to Stony Silence. On his turn, he Cryptic Command my Nature's Claim. I responded in guttural response to Cryptic. That tapped him out. I untapped, engineered explosives away the Rest in Peace, and then the game ended. I was like, wow. Okay. Yep. Yeah, this deck's really busted, and I think he went like 8-1 in the event, and the deck was just really impressive. It was just doing things that just didn't feel like it should be able to do. He was just tearing Tron apart. He played Tron like 3 times and was just absolutely destroying the deck. It just felt like, unless Tron had its nut draw of like turn 3 Karn, turn 4 Ulamog, it just didn't stand a chance. Nothing Tron was doing was really relevant outside of stone raining them, so they didn't stone rain him enough, and he comboed off. And there were even times where it was just like, people would have these like things that look like they stopped his deck in play, and they didn't. It's like, he's playing against an opponent with a Chalice on 1, and his win con is looping Pirate Spellbomb, and then, all of a sudden you like look over and he's just like, he beats it. He just engineers explosives it away. The deck's really impressive. It really is the type of deck where your hate card for it can't really get beat by engineered explosives, because they can just make engineered explosives kind of kill anything, and it just like works in their combo, and they have to keep looping it. So on that note, some hate cards I think people need to start picking up that they may or may not have been playing before. One I really like is Gaddock Teague. I think definitely if you're playing Boggles, you need some Gaddock Teagues. If you're playing humans, you might want to start getting some Gaddock Teagues. I think the card's just well positioned right now anyway, but that is a card to look out for. And then Leyline of the Void is actually very, very good against KCI. It makes none of their essentially they play a bunch of artifacts that cantrip, and it makes them all not really cantrips, so it just slows them down so much that if they don't have the Nature's Claim, they're going to be in trouble. So I like Leyline of the Void and Gaddock Teague, like I mentioned. I think those are 2 cards we need to start looking out for.
Yeah, I will say my Trinisphere plan did work.
Sure.
Trinisphere was very good. It just was not good against most of the decks that I played against. So,
yeah,
that's a problem. But it's very good against KCI.
Well, I believe that. I do believe that.
Because you really just need to, like, slow them down. And Trinisphere is it's just hard to play through. That's just gum up the works and then close it out. Couple Reality Smashers, bang bang, get the job done. Or at least that's the way it plays online. And then when you're in person and they're like playing Hollowvine, and then you lose because you're already dead. That happened.
Sure.
Very sad. To more exciting things. Miscellaneous event results. I like looking at the European results, personally, because it just is like a different... It's a whole different world over there, apparently. So there was an event in Prague. 290 players. That is insane.
Yeah, it's a lot of modern players.
That is a lot of players. And apparently in Europe, they love their Jund.
This is the MKM series, by the way, which is very akin to like the Star City Games circuit, but for Europe.
Got it. So, top 8 of this 290 player event. Jund, green-white value, humans, bring to light Scapeshift, Tron, blue-white control. And the Jund lists are pretty close. I think my suspicion is the ones with Leyline. There's one with Leyline of the Void that I assume did better against like Value Town and KCI.
Sure.
And like the other.
It's actually really interesting that Jund is on top of this event, because prior to this, we'd seen Mardu kind of supplanting Jund as the red-black mid-range deck of choice. But I think that kind of, Mardu is more of a response to humans because it's so good against the humans deck.
Sure.
And it's just a good deck in general. It's a fine mid-range deck, but its strong point is, it's a pile of removal deck, whereas Jund is slightly more proactive. It has, a weaker late game, but it ends the game quicker with 2 mana 5/6s. So
yeah,
if you're trying to beat KCI, I do kind of like that approach a little better than Mardu.
Yeah, I mean I will say that one of the things that got me is just Bloodbraid Elf.
Sure.
Accelerates the clock in a way that I don't know if people fully appreciate currently, because people are just like, oh, blah blah blah, Jund is bad.
Well, Bloodbraid Elf really is what made the Tron matchup a lot better for Jund. Is like, you can add pressure to the board while you're committing some sort of action that's slowing down Tron. Whereas before it was like, you're on turn 3. Do I cast my Fulminator Mage to slow them down, or am I playing like, a Tarmogoyf and a tapped land to, kind of speed up my clock? And it's like, well, Bloodbraid Elf, you can kind of be both. It's like, here's my 3/2 haste, and here's my Fulminator Mage. Like, get you. So.
And get you it do. The green-white value deck is what you would expect if it would load. So, Vizier, Kitchen Finks, Devoted Druid, like...
Well, that's not the green-white value town deck you'd expect. Value town is like, doesn't play any Vizier combo.
But they call it Selesnya Value. It's Vizier combo.
Vizier combo, sure.
Also featuring Knight of the Reliquary. And four kitchen finks.
Sure. Gotta be burned somehow.
Yeah, yes. 4 kitchen finks in the main will do that. Corrupt Decay, Bajuka Bug. Yeah. Voice of Resurgence in the side. I mean, it's real good against Jund.
Sure.
Humans, I've noticed, has started moving a little bit more towards kind of dipping their toe into non-human spells to begin with, and then like just straight up non-creature spells. I mean, this build is running Damping Sphere, Dismember, Gutshot kind of counts, but not really. I mean, that is a lot of non-creature stuff to bring in when you were playing 4 Ancient Ziggurats.
It is, but Humans has trouble with KCI and Tron, and those are decks that have kind of popped up in response to Humans being so popular, right? And if you're trying to beat those two decks, Damping Sphere looks like an enticing option because you can cast it off Cavern of Souls and Unclaimed Territory. So I think those are relevant places to go, but I think, again, the way the deck actually wants to move is they want a body here. And I'm looking more towards Gaddock because it's really good against KCI. They can't actually cast KCI, and they can't cast EE, which is their most important card in the matchup. And then it also just happens to be very good against Tron. So, I want to see them start moving. And for another card we mentioned last week, Militia Bugler, you can find your Gaddock Teagues off the Bugler's trigger. So I think moving forward we should look more towards the Kithkin Advisor, but for right now and just the way he was building it there, I think Damping Sphere is a fine choice. I don't think it's outstanding, but I think it's kind of a surgical knife for a specific metagame, and he's trying to cut the right problems here. So
yeah. So now that I look more at it, this is very interesting to me. So a couple of things stick out. 2 Dark Confidant, which not all of the decks are running. In fact, few of them I've seen are running Dark Confidant in the main. 2 Casting Malefactants, 2 Big Thalias, and 15 lands.
What?
15 lands, baby.
That is aggro.
4 Ancient Ziggurat, 4 Cavern, 4 Horizon Canopy, Island, Mana Confluence, Plains, end of list. That's wild! That is wild!
They have to have missed something. I can't imagine playing Mana Confluence over Unclaimed Territory. I mean, maybe... maybe. I don't know. That's wild. Is there something that was supposed to be Unclaimed Territory?
I don't know. Hold on, let me see.
It doesn't. 15, it really doesn't look like it, no?
2, 4... And it's 61 cards. Oh man, it's just like it's next level on every conceivable front. 15 lands, and 61 cards.
Like, I don't know how this is the conclusion you came to, but... yeah, I don't know.
Yowza.
Something strikes me as this list is wrong. We must be... MTG Top 8 must be failing us here. I can't imagine playing humans with 15 lands. It just...
Oh,
nope, he
there it
actually
is.
did it. Okay, yeah.
It actually did it.
Wow. I mean, maybe it's just next level. Not a huge fan.
Same.
But hey, I mean,
that is...
he identified a deck that you know, or
I mean,
guess
you
a
are
build
gonna
he liked.
You are gonna draw a lot of creatures.
You
That
definitely
much,
will draw creatures.
I will guarantee you will draw creatures.
11 non-Horizon Canopy lands. It's gonna be tough to flood.
Yes, it would be statistically improbable. Like, it's not impossible, but if it happens, then something is very wrong.
True. I mean, I still maintain that you want to be closer to the 19 with Bugler, but hey, I mean,
Yes, I agree.
Could we work from here?
Yeah, Scape Shift. This is Bring to Light Scape Shift. I mean, it's a toolbox deck, right? Like,
It is. I actually think Bring to Light is the direction Scapeshift wants to go for the metagame right now, and we'll touch on why later in one of our later segments.
yep. And you do get to play Worldly Council, which is a very cool card.
Yeah.
And then Tron. This is just regular old Tron with it's mono green Tron featuring 1 World Breaker and 2 Fogs in the main.
I like the Fogs. I'm
I
actually
like
a pretty big
Fogs,
fan.
too. Yeah.
It's, if you think you're going to lose to Infect, that is a pretty nice card to help that matchup.
Fog
Especially
is great.
Yeah, especially if you just need one turn, you know?
I have blown so many Infect people out with Fog. Actually,
Yeah.
I used Winds of Kalsisma because you can use it when you're attacking,
Sure.
and like your dudes still get their damage through. But anyways, Fog is a great effect. Blue-white control. Come on, baby. There we go. Blue-white control. Tension Sphere, Terminus, Timely Reinforcements. Yeah. Everything I expected, nothing I didn't. Baneslayer on the side. Seen a bunch of the lists play, what's her face? Lyra, the new angel.
Yep.
The new hotness as, like, protection from demons is not particularly relevant, nor is protection from dragons, but maybe. New Sarkin. Scred Dragons list came in first in the Classic. It was interesting.
I don't think you're playing it for the protection as much, or that you don't think the protection is relevant. I think the relevant text is that one of them doesn't die to cast down, the other one does.
There you go.
As one is like, I mean, that's pretty minor, but I mean that's the thing. And then the other thing is, like, if you were gonna play 2 of this type of card, like, you'd want to split them because one gives the other one +1/+1.
Yes. And if you can't win the game after you stick a 5/5 flying first strike lifelink, then I think it's a bad news for you. Oh, actually, 2 Spell Queller on the side. Interesting. I don't hate that. Two Spell Quellers and a click.
I mean, you have to be able to pressure. Like, blue-white just has such a hard time with Storm and Burn and decks of that nature that you need to be able to pressure them somehow. And
decks that cast spells.
Yeah, decks that cast spells, essentially. So you got to pressure them somehow. I think that's a fine way to do it.
Okay. Fair enough. I did want to touch on a couple of other sort of interesting things. The Modern Challenge from the 18th, which is like the day after we recorded last week. Spider Space, number 1. Humans, 19 lands. A much more reasonable 19 lands than the 15 land special in Prague.
Yeah, that I can get behind.
And 4 Militia Buglers.
And Spider Space knows, man. Spider Space is he's played a lot of Death and Taxes before this. I've seen his name pop up a lot with, small creature decks that play Aether Vial.
Yep.
And he knows, even ones that don't play Aether Vial, but he likes small creatures. He's a big fan of them, and if he's playing 4 Militia Bugler, then you should probably be playing 4 Militia Bugler.
Yes. Yep. Sideboard, very similar, though. Auriok Champion, Dismembered, Gutshot, Kataki, Rex Sage. So, like, more non-humans, right? Like,
well, if you look at sideboards before Militia Bugler, humans would often go, like, 2 of every sideboard card and then 3 of the important ones. So it kind of felt like they had a small sideboard because they had to dedicate so many slots to the same spell because they don't have any really filtering. But now that you have Bugler, you can play, like, 1 Selfless Spirit and expect to draw that a reasonable amount of times, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep. I'm
a fan.
I could see that. Also, the Modern Challenge, Hollow One. Yep. It's doing its thing.
Doing Hollow One things.
Yep. This is Banned Spirits. Shout out to Kat, the captain of the Spirit Squad. Get to meet her very briefly between rounds. She is lovely. More humans, 2 Militia Buglers. But it did have the Dark Confidant. I like the Dark Confidant, honestly.
I really do. I don't. I think Militia Bugler is just a better effect.
Porque no los dos. Like, why wouldn't you just play both?
Well, because he only has 2 Buglers. Like, you could have 4.
That is correct. But you could play 4 Buglers and also some number of Dark Confidants. Like, for example, you could play 1 Dark Confidant because your Bugler is going to get it the lion's share of the time in, like, medium-length game. I just
don't like Dark Confidant in humans. When I played humans, I like cards that get their value right now, and Dark Confidant gets their value later, so that's more of my theory. Also, shout out Max McVitie, top-8ing this with Hollow One.
Oh, is that...
No, that was Max Attack.
Max Attack, oh, okay. Oh, I see. Yeah, it's a play, like, on his name. I got it.
Yep.
I see. Collected... Bant. This looks like... this is like Knight of the Reliquary, Bant, good stuff.
Oh, a Johnny Adversary of Tyrants, top-8ing a Modern Challenge.
Called it.
Card's good.
Yeah, card's good. Johnny Adversary Tyrants and 2 Retreat to Coral. So it did have the combo in it. But other than the Knight of the Reliquary, Retreat to Coral, just like literally all good stuff.
Yep.
7 Mana Dorks, Courser Crewfix, Kasali Pride Mage in the main, Reflector Mage, Scavenging Ooze, Selfless Spirit, Spellqueller, Tireless Tracker, Voice of Resurgence, like, all the good stuff. And then sideboard, obviously, like, a ton of one-offs. Disdainful Stroke, Dramoka's Command, Gideon Allies, Zendikar, Rock's Warmonk, bringing it back, baby! Oh, that's a spicy meatball. I haven't seen him in a minute. 3/4 lifelink for 3. Settle Wreckage. I really like Settle Wreckage. I'm warming up to it more and more and more. In the Delver list that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, I was looking for an effect like that. I ended up playing Echoing Truth, and echoing anything, I think is worth more of a look now than it has been in the recent memory. There's a lot of things that play just like redundant. Like, if you've ever Echoing Truth 3 Hollow Ones, let me tell you, that feels real good.
Yeah, that's nice. It's real nice.
So that's kind of some of what is going on. Big picture, obviously, like, still a lot of humans, still a lot of control, like, still a lot of Trons, still a lot of Mardu, still a lot of, like, Affinity and Burn, and KCI is like the sort of boogeyman combo deck. I would be more looking at, like, make sure you don't lose to Infect.
Yep.
And Storm, like that kind of stuff. So, and yeah, play Stony Silence and have some way to interact with the Nature's Claim. I think are both the advice that I would give somebody to wanted to beat KCI.
Yeah, absolutely.
Freaking Nature's Claim, man.
Card's good.
It is good. It's good in certain things. It's not invigorate and legacy infect good, but it is very good. Invigorate's a silly card.
Yeah, I died to that this weekend, actually.
There you go.
Also, the guy who got second place in the event, he kind of bullied me around with his infect deck. Got invigorated a bunch. I gained a lot of life. It didn't really help me very much, but I did.
Wait, did he have like a red beard?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, my friend top 8'd the Legacy Classic with Infect, so.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, no, this is the guy who got second at the actual event. The team event.
Oh. Never mind. Well, anyways, shout out Jake. Shout out Aaron Barrich for letting him borrow the deck.
Sure.
Deck's real good. Just turn 3 kills all over the place. Oh, there was, man, I was scrolling through, as I was scrolling through the competitive Modern League 5.0s, I saw a familiar face whose 5.0 list got published while they were testing a bunch of stuff and screwing around.
Yeah, this is the Blue Moon deck I was testing for SCG Indianapolis this weekend. Funny story about this deck. I'd been playing it for a little while. I actually had some 5.0s in the past, too, that got posted. But if you look at my past 5.0s, they almost always had 22 lands. And I saw a list get posted on Twitter that had 21 lands, and they decided that they were going to cut the 22nd land for a Torrential Gearhulk, which is a 6-drop. As you might imagine, I was a little skeptical at first. It was like,
sure.
You know, cutting your 22nd land in your deck for a 6-drop seems aggressive, but I'm always down to play more Snapcaster Mages, so let's try it out. I came to the conclusion that it was a little greedy. I was having a little bit of trouble making the mana work, so kind of off that. I want the 22nd land back, but I can still see playing the Torrential Gearhulk. The card was actually quite good, so I'm going to keep testing,
great.
but there's a...
It's the same price as Snap Cryptic, and you get a 5/6.
Yeah, and the deck actually struggles with big creatures, so the 5/6 is so relevant in this deck. It's so nice. And also, it's really sweet with Thing Ice, because you can like play it, flip your thing, bounce it back to your hand, play it again on your next turn. It's all the value.
That is a lot of value.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you can't win from there, then it's the Baneslayer thing, right? Like, if you stick one and your opponent doesn't kill it in one turn, and you can't win the game from there.
Well, the problem is like a 5/6 is really big, but it also just dies to Kolaghan's Command, which a lot of decks play. And like you'll be playing against like Infect, and you'll just like have a Nature's Claim, stuff like that. So it's not as insane in the deck as it seems like it could be, but it's still good. But yeah, I think I'm gonna play Blue Moon this weekend. I really like how the deck's positioned. I think people misplay against the deck a lot. I think they misevaluate how good Thing in the Ice is, which honestly, the more I play, just feels like the best card in the deck. Well, okay, to be fair, the best card in the deck is Blood Moon. Blood Moon just like steals games, and then it's probably like Snapcaster and Cryptic Command. But Thing in the Ice is like what allows this deck to exist in my mind. I don't think you can play it without those cards.
Top 5.
Yeah, I mean top 5, but it just I've played this deck like a lot of other ways. Like I've played it with Through the Breach and Emrakul. I've played it with Madcap Experiment and Platinum Empyreon. I played like Deceiver XR Kiki-Jiki, and Thing of the Ice just is so cheap, and it buys you so much time, and then I feel like once this deck got established, it wouldn't be very good, because it's pretty easy to beat a Thing of the Ice if that's what you want to do, but when people aren't prepared for it, it just catches them off guard, and they misplay around the card, and then it's a really powerful card when you can flip it, so I don't know. I've been impressed with the deck. I think it's pretty well positioned. I'm going to try it this weekend, see how it goes. I don't think the deck's necessarily great, but I enjoy playing it, so I'm going to sleeve it up and see what happens.
I mean, I like the fact that it's not all in on Blood Moon.
No, it's not. You find Blood Moon a lot. I mean, you're playing 8 cantrips and 2 copies of Blood Moon, so you find the card a reasonable amount of the time, and when you want Blood Moon, you really want Blood Moon, like... your opponent goes, Urza's Tower Expedition Map, go. You're like, Serum Visions, oh, those aren't Blood Moon, bottom. Right. So, when you want Blood Moon, you really want it, but it's also nice that you don't have to play a bunch of copies, so you can get rid of it. Like when you're playing against Mardu Pyromancer, Blood Mooning them
Not great.
usually very good because they play their own. So, yeah, but it's a good blue deck right now. If people are want to play blue decks, I think. You know how much I love Jeskai. If I thought Jeskai was really good right now, I'd definitely play it, but I just haven't loved it recently, and this deck has been performing better for me, so I'm going to try it out.
There you go. Let's do listener questions, and then Team Modern, because Team Modern technically was a listener question.
Sure.
First listener question, kind of also a statement. Tron is currently good. True. Will Scapeshift make a comeback in response? Short answer, no. Long answer, it is fine to play, but you really, really, really need to find a way to beat KCI, because you are not going to do it the way the deck is built right now.
Yeah, Scapeshift is... I mean, it is really hard to beat KCI with Scapeshift. You kind of just have to be faster. And while Scapeshift is consistent, it is not faster than KCI. KCI getting to play Mox Opal and Mind Stone is really good against them, and KCI or Scapeshift's interaction is not good against KCI. Even the hate cards they can have for KCI aren't even that good. In my experience, Ancient Grudging KCI and Nature's Claiming and Rex Saging, all of those things just don't work against the deck. That's just not the right way to approach hate cards against the deck. And that's kind of what Scapeshift has. So I think in the short term, while KCI is still very popular and heavily played, moving to Bring to Light is actually a pretty good call, because it gives you cards that actually do matter against KCI, like Ceremonious Rejection, and other counterspells, right? Because just like I think the best way to beat KCI is, put a clock on them while at the same time, having a counterspell for KCI. Because as soon as KCI hits the board, you're probably going to lose if they're doing their thing. But if you can stop it from resolving for just long enough to get your combo off, then you're probably going to be in a good spot. Which Bring to Light does. Bring to Light does that well. It plays Remand, it can play Ceremonious Rejection, it can play Cryptic Command, and just buy enough turns to resolve its combo and win.
Yeah, well, and I'm trying to think. Anger of the Gods hits Scrap Trawler and Mirror Trigger, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't do anything. Doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, I guess if they don't have a KCI then, because you could go off without KCI.
You can, but it doesn't. You don't really like you can't like. The deck needs KCI. It is built to find KCI. Like, you can do stuff without KCI. You can cycle through a bunch of stuff and kind of find the card, but you're not really going to go off without it, because you just can't make that much mana without the card.
If you either think you might want to build Scapeshift in the future, or you just kind of want to have them for your collection, now is a very good time to buy them, because they are cheap, because they are in Core 19.
Yep. Scapeshift should be pretty cheap for a couple months here.
I would say the same thing about Crucible Worlds. Like, I don't know if anybody needs 4 Crucible Worlds, but if you were going to get 4, I mean, now's your chance, because they're like $20, and
even just one, like, it's a good time to just pick up the one, because there's a lot of decks. Oh, I don't know. There's not that many decks in Modern that play Crucible. It's more of like a card where Wasteland's legal, but it's always nice to have one. It's great to just throw one in your box of Modern cards and just have it for later.
Indeed. Should you jam Snapcaster into every blue deck? Asks one of our patrons.
The answer is yes. Humans has moved to playing a basic island recently, so I think they need to start also playing Snapcaster Mage.
False. That I'm gonna push back on that one a little bit. Even Delver, which is, let's say, 80% spells, runs a maximum of 1 Snapcaster usually, sometimes 2, but most often 1, because you need to have something impactful to snap back.
Also, like, you are right that there are decks that play instants and sorceries that don't necessarily want Snapcaster Mage. But my point with the card is that it is so good. Like, it is the most played creature in Modern. And there are times where that becomes less true, but it is the most played creature in Modern. you'd be hard pressed to make an argument to me that it's not in the top 3 best creatures in Modern by a lot. I think it's the best creature in Modern. I could see arguments for a few other creatures, but I'm pretty sure Snapcaster is just the best creature. And it's like, if you wanted to tell me that there are decks that are playing like a bunch of, like, obviously, I'm kidding about the humans thing. I don't think you should play it in humans. There's no instants and sorceries. It's not going to do anything there. But in decks that are playing instants and sorceries, I think it's crazy to not play Snapcaster Mage. Like, your argument of Delver only plays 1 is valid, and it makes sense because it is kind of a mana-intensive card. But the thing is like, you're still playing 1, and that would be my argument, is maybe 4 Snapcaster Mages is wrong in this deck. But, like, if you're playing instants and sorceries, having 1 is not generally too bad, because it's just such a good value card. Now, you want a spread of instants and sorceries. Like, if you're playing a deck where your only instant and sorcery is just 4 Path to Exile, then Snapcaster Mage isn't going to be good, and you're probably not going to play it there. But if your deck has, like, Serum Visions and, like an Opt and, like, a Negate in the sideboard, and, like, some Dispels in the sideboard, like some Path to Exiles or some Lightning Bolts or something like that, I think you're just doing yourself a disservice not to play the card, because it's just so good.
And we have such a fundamental difference in view of, like, what is worth putting in a deck. Like, I get it, and I own a single Snapcaster Mage, which I play in Delver decks, and he performs admirably. I can't see just, like, slapping, like, do I want to pay 3 mana to give a Serum Visions flashback? No. Like, it doesn't do that much.
Well, but it does in some matchups. Like, if you're playing against 8-Rack, you're more than happy to do that. And that is why the card is so good. Is like, yes, you want this, like, diversity of spells to be able to flashback so that it has more modes, but it is just a modal card. And it's an extremely modal card where you get to pick the modes, essentially. Which is why it's so powerful. I mean, that is what makes it so good, is that the later the game goes, the better of a draw it is, the more modes the card has, the more it does. So, yes, I agree with you. If your deck is super aggressive like Delver is, and you don't have that many spells that do different things, like you're kind of just playing Serum Visions and Bolts, like, yeah, it's worse, but again, like, you're playing 1, and you're playing it for a reason, because the card's so good. Like, I don't think you'd be, like, I think playing this deck, I don't think you'd be mad if you played 2. I think you'd actually find the card was pretty impressive, but
it's good to pitch a Disrupting Shoal, because I have mostly 1s. So.
That's fair. Well, I mean, that's my thing in Legacy, is I play 4 Snapcaster Mages, and they're oftentimes stapled to my Force Wills.
Sure. Just glue them together.
Oh, value. You do. You do a lot. Look at your hand, like, oh, alright, these 2 right here. It's a free counter spell.
So the sort of big, the chunkier of the questions that we got was about Team Modern Prep, ostensibly the name of the show, which we're getting to 50 minutes into it. So, which I guess shouldn't really be a surprise to anyone who's listened to the show before. So,
no, not shocking.
Here we are. So, Team Modern, I have a literal 0 experience in this particular arena, so I will pipe in sparingly as it makes sense, and I will pretty much just kind of let you take it.
Well, feel free to chime in. I think this is like, even asking questions, I think, is valid here, because this is more beginner friendly, but it has kind of elements that anybody interested in playing a Team Unified Modern event would do well to listen to. So, for me, I'm from Michigan, and my local Magic scene, Modern, is extremely popular, which probably isn't a shock to most people. Modern is very popular, just in Magic in general, but in Michigan specifically, players love Modern. Modern PPTQ season's gigantic. There's a lot more Modern players here than any other format. Local events typically are Modern, and it's really hard for... there's not a big Legacy scene here. Standard's kind of been struggling over the past few years, with Wizards, kind of struggle with Standard and whatnot. But people love team events, so we tend to have a lot of unified Modern events here, because it's just the easiest event to fire. And as it just so happens, in about 2 months, there's going to be GP Detroit, which is, maybe it's like a month at this point. No, I think it's like 2 months now. About 2 months from now, there'll be GP Detroit, which is a Team Unified Modern GP. And I think a lot of people are starting to kind of get it on their mind that, you got to kind of put your team together. You got to kind of know what you're going to play. It's pretty unlikely the format changes drastically between now and then. So you can kind of start, assigning archetypes to people. And I think it does make sense, to kind of start building your team and figuring stuff out. So I think this prep is going to help you out a little bit. So the first place to start when you're looking at Team Unified Modern is, do you have a team, right? So you get your team, and for the basis of this argument, we're going to assume you have your team. I mean, that carries with it its own issues, but we're doing the Team Unified thing. So we have our team. Now, the next question, and the first most important, is what do you have access to, right? Like, what decks can you even play? Because you can't just decide we're going to play these 3 decks and not have the decks. Like, that's just nonsense. You need...
Sure.
You need to have the decks, right? So
Step 0, play Magic.
Get decks that you can play with, right? And obviously, like, if you're listening to this, you probably have access to a deck. But, like, maybe you want to play with your 2 best friends and, like, you play, Burn, and your other friend plays Burn, and then your other friend plays Merfolk. And it's like, well, one of you is probably going to play Burn, and the guy playing Merfolk is probably going to play Merfolk, but the other Burn guy's got to figure out a new deck. And it's like maybe between you guys, you can figure out something else. But you got to kind of figure out what decks you can build, right? Then the next most important question is, what archetypes do you have experience with? And I say this as archetypes because, yes, it's very important to have experience with your deck specifically, because this is modern. It's not really going to change that much in the team event. So you would ideally have experience with your deck and know how to use your deck, but archetypal experience is valid too, where it's like, for me, like one of my examples is I played a lot of Death and Taxes, which is fundamentally a different deck than humans, but they're very similar. They're similar archetypes. They share some cards, and they share a lot of similar strategies. And it's like, it wasn't that hard for me to transition from, mono white Death and Taxes to humans because I have experience with Aether Vial Thalia decks, right? So it's like, you need to assess what decks you actually have experience with, and then what archetypes are kind of similar to those, right? Mm-hmm. So once we kind of have our basis of what decks we can play and what decks, we're kind of comfortable picking up and learning, we're going to have to kind of dig deeper into deck selection here. So, for the basic stance, like maybe you just have 3 people, they have 3 decks, you kind of have a limited choices, like you're just gonna have to play those, and that's the reality. You're gonna play what you want, or you're gonna play what you have. And I don't actually think this is bad necessarily. Like, I don't think it's 100% optimal, but I think in Modern, if you just have 3 people playing decks that don't really overlap that much, you can kind of figure out how to make some concessions to fit cards in where you need them to, so that people aren't sharing cards. But as long as people know what decks they're playing, you're gonna do pretty well probably. So, play what you have, play what you know. But then outside of that, if we're going past that towards people that are maybe more blessed, shall we say, that have 3 people that have a decent collection, you kind of have access to the entire format, right? So at this point, we're gonna look at kind of how team that just has access to Modern is gonna build their decks, because not everybody in the tournament is going to, have those choices, but, kind of the principles for what they're doing are going to kind of help you decide maybe how to build your sideboard and whatnot. So, my fundamental strategy with building 3 decks is there are 6 pillars to this format. They are 6 different spells, essentially, we'll say. And they're all kind of the best thing to be doing in their color, shall we say. And these are cards that I consider to be kind of the best cards in Modern. And that if you can get them in your deck, you kind of want to do that. So for me, the red pillar of the format is Lightning Bolt. I don't think that's close. I think when you actually go to sit down to build these decks, you're going to find that is one of the cards that overlaps the most. The next spell I put on here is Mox Opal. That one doesn't actually overlap that much, but it's so powerful and, is very archetypal, defining in the decks it's played in that I consider it a pillar of the format. It's kind of the pillar of colorless decks, if you will. And stapled to Mox Opal, you kind of have Ancient Stirrings, although not all Mox Opal decks are Ancient Stirrings decks, and not all Ancient Stirring decks are Mox Opal decks, but they do kind of play well together, right? The blue pillar of the format, shall we say, is Serum Visions. With Serum Visions, you'll usually find Snapcaster Mage, you'll find, other blue cards, but I think the most played blue card in Modern is Serum Visions, and that's for good reason. And it ends up being a pretty big pillar of this format, I guess. And then green, I have Ancient Stirrings because of its, how popular it is with Mox Opal, but also I think you can put Noble Hierarch here.
Sure.
But yeah, for green, you got the Ancient Stirrings Noble Hierarch tandem, I guess. And then black is just the 1-mana discard / fatal push. Thoughtseize, Inquisition, fatal push. And for the sake of this, it's just kind of Thoughtseize, but you'll kind of find that, where you find Thoughtseize, all these other things accompany it. And that's why it's considered like a pillar of the format, right? Is that you're going to want a Thoughtseize deck. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't want a Thoughtseize deck, but a lot of teams will be considering, hey, should we play a Thoughtseize deck, right? And then white is a no-brainer. It's Path to Exile.
Sure.
It's the most played white card in the format by a wide margin. And for good reason. It's probably the best removal spell in the format. It's right there with Lightning Bolt. They're kind of stapled together, right?
Path to Exile is the best removal spell in the format.
Yeah. I think you make an argument. It depends on what's being played and whatnot, but...
there's some asterisks to that, but not a ton. So
I think you're right. I think it is the best. It's close though. There are times where Lightning Bolt is better, and there are reasons to play both. But for the sake of this argument, it doesn't really matter because one's white and one's red, and then you're gonna kind of split them up, right?
Yep.
But I consider these to be kind of the staples of the format, right? So where it's like when you start to look at the decks that your team can play, these are the cards that are going to overlap the most because they're the 1-mana spells. They're the most powerful 1-mana spells, and they are the ones that decks share because generally, if you look at modern decks, they're kind of built around powerful 1-mana spells, and then they play other cards that kind of give that deck defining characteristics. But, for the most part, they start here on these 1-mana spells.
Mm-hmm.
So I played a Team Unified Modern event, I believe 2 weeks ago, and there was a lot of discussion on, we want to play broken cards, we want to play proactive strategies because we think that's a good way to win in Modern. How do we get these cards into our decks, right? And it's like, I gave you 6 pillars kind of from 6 colors, where it's like, the 5 colors and then colorless with Mox Opal. And you only need 3 decks, so it's like you can kind of pick, 2 of each and shove them into a deck. And, if you look at decks, some of them will play 3. Some of these, I don't think I really ever saw 4, but it's not that uncommon that you would have 3 of these. Like, for instance, Jeskai Control plays Serum Visions, Path to Exile, and Lightning Bolt. And, KCI is playing Ancient Stirrings and Mox Opal. So yeah, you will find these in a lot of different decks. But for us, the one of the big overlaps was Lightning Bolt. It was really hard to find 2 different decks that we were happy with that both didn't play Lightning Bolt. And when you didn't play, and when we did, it was kind of like, one of these decks is playing Lightning Bolt in the sideboard. Is it really that important? And the answer is yes. For instance, the deck we're talking about is Storm here. And it's like, yes, Lightning Bolt is that important. The card is that good. There are a bunch of other inferior red 1-mana removal spells that kind of work as, for Lightning Bolt replacement proxies, but they just aren't as good as Lightning Bolt. They just straight up aren't. So, Modern is vast enough, and you have enough options that making these concessions are generally going to be bad if you can not do that, right?
Sure.
So, you don't want to be playing a Lightning Bolt deck and a Burst Lightning deck if you have the choice. If you don't have the choice, do what you got to do. Play the deck you want to play. But, given the choice, it's like, well, maybe it's better if we can find, a Lightning Bolt deck and a Path to Exile deck as opposed to, 2 Lightning Bolt decks.
Burst Lightning is a bad card, and you should.
That said, I'm registering a Burst Lightning this weekend.
Blech.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. I just wanted a fifth Lightning Bolt really bad, and I thought that was the best one.
I would play a wizard. I would play Wizard's Lightning before I played.
Yeah, Thing of Ice is not a wizard, sadly.
Yeah, but Snapcaster Mage is a wizard. I almost said a lizard.
Burst Lightning deals 4 damage sometimes. That's kind of relevant.
Yeah, for 5 mana.
I mean, sometimes you flood it out. You just want to deal 4 to their face.
Just
regardless,
play a Wizard's Lightning. Just
no,
saying.
I can't. I'm not. You need I need to be I'm concerned about killing their turn 1 Noble Hierarch. That's what I care about. Wizard's Lightning doesn't do that very well.
Sure.
I mean, that is actually the defining thing. It's I want to kill your turn 1 play. That's why I want to kill your turn 1 Noble Hierarch a lot. That is a card that I am scared of with my deck. So anyway,
play Gutshot.
I'm not going to main deck a Gutshot. I could play it, but
coward.
Fair. That is fair. Actually, maybe I should play Gutshot. Gutshot's not horrible. But anyway,
just saying.
Moving on.
Yep.
So once you've kind of looked at these pillars, it's the question is how do we break them up and jam jam as many of them into our decks as we can? And it was you kind of just look at the decks that are being played right now. Like Tron, for instance, is not a bad option for these because it's only using 1 of these, so it opens up another deck to kind of use 3 of these, and it's a powerful deck, so it's a fine choice. Affinity also is kind of the type of deck that's only using 1 of these cards, so it's it's a good choice. We chose to go with KCI, which used Mox Opal, Ancient Stirrings, and it was actually using Lightning Bolt in the sideboard, so that was kind of awkward. We decided Galvanic Blast worked well enough in the deck, but it certainly is a downgrade. So, yeah, I mean, you kind of want to pick powerful decks that use these cards. You don't want to let these cards sit on the sideline because they are so good, but at the same time, finding a good deck that's only using 1 of them opens you up to play a Jeskai Controller, like a Mardu Pyromancer, decks that are using multiple of these cards, essentially. Although I don't think Mardu necessarily uses multiple of them, but point being, you can find decks that use multiple of them. Death Shadow is definitely using multiples of these cards, and that's a good deck to play in this format. We strongly consider Death Shadow. But we settled on Storm, Krark Clan Ironworks, and Humans. Humans was particularly nice because it doesn't really use cards other decks use outside of Noble Hierarch.
Sure.
But Noble Hierarch is such a powerful card, and the deck itself is so good that was fine. That was a fine choice for the event. So yeah, I mean that's where I would start. I would start by just looking at these pillars, and again, we're gonna do a more in-depth a more in-depth discussion on actual team building later. But for right now, it's just kind of you should start looking at Team Unified Modern from the pillars perspective, where it's how do we split up the 1-mana spells? What 1-mana spells is my deck using? Can we get more of these than other decks if this one's only using a few? And then kind of the second part to this is how do you set up seats once you've just decided what decks you're playing, and how do you put what player where, I guess. And the real answer is that it doesn't actually matter that much. Just kind of put players wherever they feel comfortable sitting. Generally, the most social person or knowledgeable person is going to be in the middle. The outside 2 seats don't really matter. It's all kind of random. I would caution, though, not to put the slowest deck in the middle, as the middle seat is generally the slowest matchup because it's the most traffic between all 3 people where, they're constantly looking on in the middle game. And then I would also say that you want the most knowledgeable person in the middle where possible, because you don't want anybody playing for anybody else. That just slows you down too much, where it's you're trying to play 2 matches at once. It's too distracting. It's not a good idea. But having somebody be able to kind of identify cards in an opponent's deck and maybe help you with a scry on a Serum Visions or a Thoughtseize decision, that type of thing, in the middle seat's really nice. And the other thing that you can do in the middle seat in Team Unified Modern specifically is, from the middle, you can, pretty easily see all 3 decks your opponents are playing. And it's maybe you're playing against, you're trying to help your teammate decide what to play around, and you're like, well, I'm kind of scared of my opponent having bolt here, but you're like, you saw the guy on the far other side, and you already cast a lightning bolt, so their opponent doesn't have a lightning bolt. That's kind of information you can share back and forth. Tell them, well, you don't have to play around this card. They already have it over here. So that type of sharing is always good. It's going to help teams do that, and then mulliganing. But yeah, I would strongly caution against like actually playing for teammates. I think that's going to get you draws, which are essentially losses in this format. So stay away from that. But yeah, mulliganing, scries, Thoughtseizes, those type of decisions are great and help, and that's kind of where you should be focusing your teamwork on, I guess.
Yeah, I do. I guess it's worth mentioning, just sort of a quick side note on Thoughtseizes, because I was the recipient of some very, very, very sketchy Thoughtseizes this weekend. If you are going to use discard spells effectively, you need to have enough format knowledge that you are not taking something that the opponent's deck has 15 more copies of, because that is bad.
Yeah.
So I had a bunch of people just like take random stuff, and I'm like, just immediately top deck something that is the exact same effect, and that's like, no, you need to like take the good cards. Don't take cantrips unless it's the only thing you can take. Don't take, take an Ancient Strings. Don't take a Chromatic Sphere.
Sure.
That is my micro rant RE.
That's fair. I mean, Thoughtseize is a really hard card, so.
Agreed.
All right, what do we got for a brew here? Let's get past this team stuff. We'll come back to this later.
All right, so we are back on. I can't get away from Rug Delver. I just really love it, and I decided after I saw someone 5-0 with a Rug Delver list that I was going to put it back together. It has been long-time listeners of the show will remember that it has been sort of in slumber, in stasis, since Cataxian Probe was banned. And I was like, you know what? Somebody's making it work. I'm going to make it work. So I tested some Bug Delver lists that sort of use like Gurmag Angler instead of Hooting Mandrills, because like that was one of the things that I kept coming back to is like Hooting Mandrills is a good card, asterisk. When you run out of gas, you lose the game. Pretty much.
Yep.
And so that's what kept happening to me, and finally I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put Bedlam Revelers in here, because all I want to do with this deck is get more cards in my hand so that I can have like temporary answers, right? Like just boom, like bounce your thing, vapor snag your blocker, hit you for a couple, bang. I use Thought Scour very aggressively in this deck, in the sense that often I am Thought Scouring my opponent.
Sure.
Based on what's in my hand. Like if I already have the stuff that I want, I'll Thought Scour myself just to grow my Tarmogoyf. If I don't have what I want, I just want a card, and like a non-zero number of times you will jam an opponent up by throwing something in their graveyard they didn't want in there.
Dude, I would caution to not Thought Scour your opponent very often.
Explain why.
Well, like if you know what they're playing, then it can be fine. But like in the dark, most modern decks kind of have graveyard synergies. So it's like even if you're like Thought Scouring Jeskai control, it's like they still play Snapcaster Mage. Like you might find a bolt that they wouldn't have had before for their Snapcaster.
Sure.
But like you could hit the disaster scenario where you're like turn one Thought Scour them and you're playing against Dredge and you just like milled over a prized amalgam. Like,
oh no, I can't imagine a situation that I would ever like blind Thought Scour somebody on turn one. That's a little bit aggressive. So the list that I was playing, so originally what I was running was 17 lands, and I was running 17 lands because I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just me, if it's the shuffler, if it's me and the shuffler and the way that we interact, but I was very regularly flooding on 18 lands. So I just said, you know what? Fine. 17 lands it is. 4 Delvers, obviously. 4 Young Pyromancers. 4 Tarmogoyfs. 3 Bedlam Revelers. The creature package is fairly tight. They're really... Like, you lose the trample of Hooting Mandrills, which is sometimes relevant. But,
I think that's relevant, but I think Reveler is just a much better card. I'd be much happier playing that.
Yes, agreed. And my results thus far have borne that out. Just a 3/4 with a free Ancestral Recall turns out it's pretty good.
Well, that's good, but then you also just have the synergy of you play Tarmogoyf, right? Where it's like Mandrills and Tarmogoyf together, not a combo.
Correct.
It's manageable, like it's something you can do, but it's just like they're just naturally not a combo. Whereas Reveler and Tarmogoyf kind of are a combo in the sense that like they both want cards in your graveyard, and Reveler puts more cards in the graveyard while drawing you even more cards.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm not 100% convinced that I could go to 4, but 3 feels really good. And then
I think 3 is a fine place to be if you're not playing looting. I think it's fine.
Well, you are playing looting. You just play... I played 3 instead of 4 because there's so many other cantrips. Like,
yeah, I mean, even at 3, I think that's fine because 2 Revelers in your hand never does anything. So it's like you really only ever want to draw 1. 3 is the right number if you're just looking for 1.
Yeah. Board interaction stuff, lightning bolts, obviously. I had my original build had an Echoing Truth in the main because, like I said, I was running into so many decks that just had like redundant threats or like Pyromancer tokens. It just the bounce, being able to bounce a number of permanents is very powerful. I would argue that it's a main deckable effect. I don't know if that's ultimately going to be the case, but it does also fit.
I think it's main deckable. I think it is.
Well, it fits nicely with Disrupting Shoal because you don't have a lot of 2s that are blue.
Sure.
So it's like in the original list, it was Echoing Truth, Strategic Planning, and Simic Charm are the only 2 mana things that you could pitch to Disrupting Shoal.
You can pitch other Disrupting Shoals.
You could pitch other Disrupting Shoals. That's fair. And Logic Knot. So I had a fair amount of counter magic as well, like Disrupting Shoal and Logic Knot. Ace. Like, I love Disrupting Shoal, especially in Delver decks, because 17 or 18 lands, you are pretty much going to be tapped out every turn. Like, you need to play spells. Like, you need to do stuff, but you also need to have some sort of protection. The good news is a lot of that interaction happens at 1 mana, so just having Disrupting Shoal and Serum Visions or Opt or Thoughtscour or whatever, you have a ton of things to do.
Well, in this deck, Disruption Shoal is kind of like a build your own mental misstep, and I think that's fine. I think that's a fine place to be.
Yeah. So I have 3 in here. I have played as many as 4, and been fine with it. It probably is overkill, but it's just so good when it's like, because also people aren't expecting it, right? Like, it's not a commonly played card, so people don't play around it, and they often don't have the option to play around it even if they want to. Sure. So you're gonna get value off of it. Also, you can hardcast it, right? Like, it's like the Vengevine of counterspells. Like, sometimes it's free, but you can also just cast it.
Yeah, you can. 100%.
Logic Knot, obviously. Logic Knot plus Thoughtscour is great. What else? Simic Charm, I will defend to my dying breath. One of Simic Charm has closed out so many games for me. Like, Giant Growth is great. The return target creature, so it's basically like your 4th or 5th Vapor Snag of giant growth, because sometimes you just need a giant growth, right? Like it's almost it acts like another lightning bolt.
Sure.
And then it also sometimes will save your guy from removal. And permanents you control gain hexproof is occasionally relevant. It's not common, but it does happen. And that is also quite good, right? Counter your... It is the only way that you can profitably interact with Abrupt Decay, and that is definitely a card that this deck is very soft to.
Sure. I mean, having a bounce your own creature spell when you have Bedlam Reveler in your deck too is also just real nice.
Seems fine. Yep. Very, very good. I don't think I have not had occasion to do that yet, but
I'm sure you will. There'll come a time where you're like, all right, I'm going to return this. I drew 3, I drew like 2 lands and a Simic Charm. Oh, let's bring Bedlam Reveler back and cast it again.
I like it. Would do. Strategic planning, I just put it in there because I wanted another card selection spell. It probably doesn't make the final cut, but it is a very good spell.
I think strategic planning, strategic planning is not a great card, and it's expensive in Modern, but I think you could do worse. It's doing a lot of what this deck wants, is like Thoughtscour number 5, but like not being an awful card. Like I hate Thoughtscour so much. I think it's awful.
It is. It's a necessary evil.
Exactly, it's a necessary evil. Like it does what the deck wants, but the fact that it has no selection to it just makes it feel so bad sometimes. Where it's like, oh, I'm kind of flooding here. It'd be really nice if I could draw a spell. You like draw a Seer Vision. It's like, oh, I'm gonna find spells. This is great. Draw a Thoughtscour. You're like, oh, I just flipped 2 spells into my graveyard and drew a land. Perfect.
Yeah, that definitely does happen. I started out with, I had 2 opt, 4 Serum Visions, 4 Thoughtscour, and 3 Faithless Looting for my sort of like cantrips, quote unquote. It was fine. I got the cards that I wanted, pretty much, right? Like you need to keep the cards coming. So
sure.
All of those cards do those things. And that's pretty much it. Like that's the deck. It's that and 2 Logic Knots and slam it. I played a 1 of Lumbering Falls, which is probably a mistake, but it's a pet card. And it does kill people. Yeah. It's very hard to kill.
I think that card is good, but I think it's just too hard to realistically use it. It costs like 5 mana if you're counting it. Which maybe this deck gets to, but that like on 17 lands, it just like seems like it's more valuable to have an untapped land.
Agreed. So
that said, one or 2 changes I think I would like in this deck with like this many Thoughtscours and this many, strategic and the fact that you have strategic planning and Faithless Looting. I would love it if you put like 1 or 2 other permanents in here that are going to make Tarmogoyf bigger. Where it's like you really want to keep it the way you have it, where it's mostly instants and sorceries, but like one tribal enchantment or something like a Tarfire would be nice or something.
Yeah, that's actually a fairly classic inclusion in these decks that I left out, mainly due to forgetting about it.
Sure.
So,
but even like I'm not thinking of a good enchantment off the top. Like maybe like 1 Blood Moon or something, like a decent enchantment that you can find when you really need it, but most of the time you're just gonna kind of put it in your graveyard and that's fine.
Yeah, Tarfire I think is the thing of choice. The other stuff that I would think about is like a Courser of Crufix or something, like an enchantment creature.
Yeah, Coursers. I think I prefer Blood Moon just because this is mostly a blue-red deck, like very lightly splashing green. That it's not that hard for you to like have Island Forest and just be fine once you have the Blood Moon. But yeah, like one of those would be good. I don't know if there's any artifacts, but just something along those lines where it's like, I'm not saying go overboard, like, oh, let's put like a bunch of these, but like 1 Tarfire, 1 Blood Moon they'll just be games where your Tarmogoyf's just a point bigger and that matters,
Mm-hmm. I've also played in the past like a 1 of Architects of Will.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
It's a good way to get him in there.
Sure.
So I had
Architects of Will is a great one, actually.
I was so as I was playing, I sort of got my legs back for playing the deck and sort of remembering what the terrible matchups are. And burn, man. Beat and burn is really hard. The mana base is extremely punishing. You're like double fetch shocking pretty much every game for the first 2 turns. So that is a significant problem, and counterspells are not good against them because all of the spells in their deck do the same thing. So countering one of them really doesn't do much.
I disagree about that. I think the best way for this deck to beat that is to play Dispel and like Spell Pierce.
Okay.
Because it's not that, like, you're right that all their spells do the same thing, but it's also true that, like, they all their spells do the same thing, and they need, like, 6 of their spells to resolve for them to win. Like, they just have to resolve 6, so it's like letting them resolve 5 and then countering number 6 is very effective. Especially when you're just, like, trying to buy a turn with Tarmogoyf or whatever.
Sure.
So I think if you were trying to beat Burn, like, a Spell Pierce and a Dispel on the sideboard would be a good place to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really going to go into the sideboard that I had was a complete mess of just, like, nonsense of stuff to try out.
No, that's fair. That's a good way to brew, but I'm just telling you, like, if you're identifying, like, hey, Burn is a problem, like, maybe we should be looking at, like, a couple of Dispels and some Spell Pierces in the sideboard.
Yeah. Cards that I will say stood out as being very good, Silent Gravestone actually did a lot of work for me. I'm warming up to this card because it's something you can slam early against KCI. Sure. So you can slam this on turn 1. It's much better than Relic of Progenitus, which is just not gonna cut the mustard. Because it creates a continuous effect, it's not something that they can weasel around with.
Actually, that's a really good call on your part. That's a lot better than a bunch of other graveyard hate against KCI specifically.
Yeah. And also, like, man, you want to get wrecked by a deck, play against something that has a Scavenging Ooze against your Bedlam Reveler or Tarmogoyf deck. Having this in play is quite good.
Sure.
So the way that I had beaten KCI a couple of times with this is, first of all, just like counter whatever their first thing is. Whatever they're trying to do, it doesn't matter. Whatever their first spell is. And this is the same way with Tron, too. And Hollow One, like, counter their first... counter their Burning Inquiry. If you're playing against Hollow One, you counter their Burning Inquiry, there's a good chance their hand just doesn't do anything.
Yeah, no, for real.
And that's
playing against Hollow One, countering their Enabler is the way to go.
But, I mean, I had the same experience against Tron, where I would, like, play a Delver... and then have Disrupting Shoal and a 1-drop, and they would go, like, they would keep some hand that was, like, a Tron piece or 2 Tron pieces, and then Ancient Stirrings and a Mana Rock, or in a, like, Chromatic Star, and they would just go, land, star, and then, like, untap Ancient Stirrings. You counter their Ancient Stirrings, and they're just like, buh.
Yep.
Got nothing. Because forcing them to draw those 5 cards to find the card they want, very, very slow for them. They get a little bit of acceleration. Yes, it does. Well, it's probably like 3 times longer, because they still get to cycle the stars and the spheres and all that stuff.
But they would get to do that anyway.
They would get to do that anyway, that's correct. So you're severely limiting the velocity that they have. And then Ceremonious Rejection post-board is just, like, nutty. Yep. So I did, like I said, I still like the Echoing Truth. I don't know that it's 100% correct. What else? I had a Grafdigger's Cage because Dredge is very difficult to beat. I had Anchor the Gods. I played... I got really salty after losing to this, like, enchantment, like, mono white devotion enchantments deck, so I just put it back to nature in my sideboard, and like, yeah, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it, baby. It's gonna be 2 mana, blow up your entire board, and then I just swing it and kill you.
Sure.
Echoing Ruin is another, like, I have a weird, right now in my head.
What does that do?
Echoing Ruin, it's Echoing Truth, except it destroys an artifact and all other artifacts with the same name.
Okay.
So it's
the ultimate counter to Tireless Tracker.
It is the ultimate counter to Tireless Tracker. It is also a 2-mana spell that will kill 3 Hollow Ones.
Yeah, no, that's valid. That's valid.
So and like I said, there are decks that run a lot of the same thing. You know, Eldrazi will certainly run, multiple, Mind Stones and stuff like that. Like, being able to take them off colorless sometimes is relevant. Like I said, is it the greatest choice in the world? Like, would I run 4 of them? No. Would I run 1 on the sideboard? Yeah, probably. I've played worse cards.
Sure.
Played 10 Street Hooligan, like, regularly.
Yeah, that card's really bad.
It's a much worse card than Echoing Ruin. What else? I was playing around with Sleep. Just straight up 4 mana, tap all your creatures, and they don't untap during the that player's next untap step. It's a little pricey, 2 blue, and it's sorcery speed, which is kind of a bummer.
I mean, if you were going to play Sleep, can I interest you in Cryptic Command?
That was eventually what I came to. I was like, well, I guess if I'm going to do that, if I'm going to go down the road, I would just play a single Cryptic.
Aaron, do you have a few minutes to spare?
Yeah. Would you like to tell me about Cryptic Command? Our Lord and Savior. Also, it does come up eventually, like, sometimes having a 4-drop to pitch to Disrupting Shoal will completely blow people out.
Look, man, that's not a 0 thing. Like, there are decks in this format that think main decking Supreme Verdict is a good idea. And then these same decks think that they need to diversify their verdicts against humans so they can beat Meddling Mage. And they come to the conclusion that they should be playing Wrath of God.
Yeah.
And against you, Wrath of God is actually pretty good.
It's quite good. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're tapped out, they cast their Wrath, and bad things happen to them. Yep.
Get them. So yeah, if you were gonna, I guess, yeah, if you were gonna play Sleep, I don't know, just the double tap is very interesting to me.
I mean, it is, but just losing the versatility is, I think, just too big a cost. Where it's like, Cryptic taps all their stuff, but it also counters something, it also bounces stuff. It's so good.
It's very good. So I do want to tell a quick deck building story about Tripbind, a card that I love, in Delver. The problem that I was having with Tripbind is that it was very swingy. When it was good, it was unbelievably good. It was uncounterable sinkhole when you, Tripbind somebody's fetch land. It was, turn off your Planeswalker, turn off your Raging Ravine, just anything, right? Like, there are a ton of, Trickbind your Storm Trigger. C'est magnifique, right? Like, that was great. Flip side, when it is bad, it does nothing. Yeah, actual straight 0, nothing. You can pitch it to Disrupting Shoal, but I was really looking for something that wasn't just a blank card, and so I was looking around, and I was like, man, I think I'm gonna try a Nimble Obstructionist. So it's the only 3-drop in the deck. You can pitch it to Disrupting Shoal. It has its cycling ability is the same as Trickbind, except it draws you a card, and it still does the Trickbind thing 90% of the way. And then, if you do not have any targets for it, it is a 3/1 flash flyer.
Yep.
So, I only played a couple games with it so far. I've been very happy with it. Is it gonna be like? It feels like Vendilion Click to me, in the sense that, if I want a ton of them, I would play 1 in the main and 1 in the side. I'm also not I would not say no to playing Vendilion Clique, but it doesn't have the same feel to me for some reason. I don't know why.
Sure.
Like, I guess like tucking one card versus like strip mining you and getting a 3-mana flyer feels better in this exact deck. Like, I don't want to give anybody the impression I think Vendilion Clique is a bad card, because it's a very good card. In this like very specific tempo build, I don't know if it is better than like Stifle on a Stick.
Well, I think it's metagame dependent, right? Where it's
Sure.
like, the problem with Nimble Obstructionist is it's one or the other. Like, it's really nice when it's nice, but like a flash 3 on fire that does nothing else isn't great. It's just like a fail case scenario.
Sure.
It's fine. It's not horrible, but it's not great. Click is just always what it is. Like, if you expect a lot of combo decks, it's nice to be able to hit their hand and pressure them at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I don't know. Different cards, different uses.
Sure. Yep. Destructive Rivalry is just good. Feed the Clan. You will very routinely have, a 4-power thing.
Sure.
So that's fine. Bedlam Reveler just being in play, it will trigger Feed the Clan after you cast it. The Prowess trigger goes on the stack first, makes it power 4, triggers Ferocious. You gain 10 life. Yay. So, what happened afterwards is Daniela, Holy Diva, Daniela Diaz, who is a noted streamer and modern streamer, actually picked up the deck, saw that I posted it on Twitter, ran through a league with it, sort of gave her thoughts on the way that the build was, what differences, like the things that she liked, things that she didn't like, and came up with her own version, which was actually interesting. The list that she put together is 18 lands, which I'm ready to admit that 17 lands is probably too few. Guilty. Like, it was working for me, but I was running into scenarios sometimes where you just like cantrip into other cantrips and into other cantrips and other cantrips, and you just end up spinning your wheels like looking for third land. And that was kind of like, not great. So still 4 Delvers. She went 4 Opts. She had 4 Snare Visions, as I did as well. She had 2 Spell Snares, a Cut of Faithless Looting. Or no, I'm sorry, she sold 3 Faithless Looting. She added a Fort Bolt, and then took out Echoing Truth and Strategic Planning for 2 remands, and added a Spell Pierce in place of some of the cantrips. Basically, she took out some of the cantrips, she added a little more board interaction, a little more stack interaction, and kind of like backdoored in some card draw in the remands. Remand is a good card. It's not necessarily like my style. That makes sense.
I was gonna say, I love Remand. Remand is my style.
It's
I'm in for Remand.
All right. I mean, like I said, I've cast a number of remands in this very deck. Like there was a point in history when this was a 4 remand deck.
I'm trying to play Remand this weekend at an SCG. I love me some Remand.
I just the thing that I run into, and I guess the thing that's frustrating about it to me is against the decks that you're already kind of like medium against, it's bad against. Right? Like remand your Goblin Guide feels awful.
Yeah, that's not good.
You know, like it just. So
I mean,
remanding
1-mana spells is always going to feel bad, but like the card is so good in other matchups that I think it's worth it. And then like in those matchups, you just take it out, sport it out.
Sure. She kept some.
Have you ever remanded a Jace the Mind Sculptor or a Teferi?
I have not. I've not had occasion to do so.
Oh, you're gonna have a good time. Let me tell you.
All right. Still 3 Bedlam Revelers. I think that's our consensus of 2. I think is that most of the deck in terms of like the creature base and the sort of core of a lot of the spells are pretty much set. I mean, it really only varies 8 cards maybe in the main deck between just sort of like fewer cantrips, an extra land. The mana base that I had in there was like a borderline placeholder. It was a complete mess. So, and I didn't catch the live because her stream starts very early my time, like 3 o'clock in the morning. So I'm generally not awake to watch it live, but I do watch the videos, which you should as well. I will put a link in the show notes to her channel, so definitely go check her out. And then her sideboard is much more comprehensive. 2 Ceremonious Rejection, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, Torpor Orb, 2 Ancient Grudges, Destructive Revelry. She put in 2 Alpine Moons. Didn't have as much trouble with Tron, I guess. So I wasn't, like, Blood Moon, Alpine Moon, like, that kind of thing wasn't on my radar. But I get it. Like, I can certainly see that being a reasonable choice. Probably more in paper, I think. If I was going to go to a big event, I think it would be more likely to take them. But, and then Abrade, Grimlevmancer, Negate, Dispel is a Staticaster. Like, all good cards on color. So I like her version a lot. Like I said, I'm not necessarily a remand guy, so I will stick probably to my Echoing Truth, give my Nimble Obstructionist a try, and go from there. But
sure.
So that was my most recent thing. I mean, I brewed a Grishol deck that had no shoals in it, and the one that I sent you, Angel's Grace, Goryo's Vengeance, Phage the Untouchable. I mean, I think that's pretty much a winner. I sent it to Chantel Campbell from Prudent Combat's podcast, as she is my resident Grishol brand expert. She played it with me on stream, and she's a noted Grishol brand player at bigger events, and I was like, I had this terrible idea, and I think it might not be terrible. And she looked at it, and she was like, it's spicy, which most people will say, and they're usually being polite, which is fine. And then she was like, I like it. I was like, all right, and 4 Gideon of the Trials, 4 Angel's Grace. Because you can still do a lot of the Grizzle Brandy kind of stuff with Angel's Grace.
Sure.
So I may give that a shot. I've Phage the Untouchable on the brain, I think, because like a lot of the Commander stuff is very nostalgic this preview season. So my mind is sort of in that era. And Phage the Untouchable is a one-hit kill. So, there's something there maybe. So that is kind of where I'm at for brewing. I've noticed people have been playing more Bridgevine, which I like as an interesting little brew deck. It's Stitcher Supplier, Vengevine, Viscera Seer, the 5-0 list, Char Aznable. Nice. It's a deep cut reference for anybody that gets it. Congratulations, you are as cool as me. Hanger-Rock Walker, basically a bunch of creatures you can cast for 0. Bushwhacker, Gravecrawler, Insolent Neonate, Stitcher Supplier, Bridge from Below, Vengevine. Basically, dump Bridge from Below and a bunch of other stuff into your graveyard, cast a bunch of stuff for 0, get a bunch of zombies, bring back your Vengevines, cast Bushwhacker, kill you. Faithful Suiting, Cathartic Reunion. Like, it's very... there's, like, no board interaction at all, other than, like, Walking Ballista. But it's neat. And, hey.
That deck's powerful. I played against it online a couple times. It's really strong.
Yes, it is very powerful. So if you are bored playing, like, an explosive aggro-y deck like Hollow One, I like the Bridgevine builds right now. They're quite cool to me. Also, 17 lands. Apparently, I'm just not in the mood to play 20 lands or like 25 lands.
Sure.
So, who knows? Maybe I'll be back to my mid-ranging ways someday. Be back to playing 24 lands with like 6 ETB tap lands and all that pokey mid-range stuff, but not today. Not today, my friend. So we have 2 things before we get to the spice rack, which is revolutionary. One of them is the social media blurb that I normally do, and one of them is a top 8 list that Zach wanted to do.
Yeah.
Thus, we're going to do a top 8 list.
I know we usually stay away from top 8 lists, but I found this one interesting enough to me that I wanted to just kind of do it on the show and get some people's thoughts on it.
Okay.
So on my car ride home from Philadelphia this weekend, it's about a 10-hour car ride. We had a lot of time to kill in the car.
Oof.
And we were debating the order in which modern lands exist, like the power rankings of lands in Modern, I guess you could say. Okay. And for the sake of the debate, we decided that they are their power rankings in the Modern format. So, like, people will say, like, shocks are better than fetches if shocks don't exist, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. All these cards exist. This is just Modern. They exist in this format. What is their power ranking? Right? Okay. So, for the sake of the ranking, we kind of came up. We came up with the top 8, and then we got one honorable mention that I feel like should be on there, but I might have missed. I don't know. Maybe it was wrong, but
all right. So the list that you put together, which was the result of this wondrous car ride, 10 hours on a car. I don't like anybody that much. So bravo for you for having travel companions that you would spend 10 hours in a car with. I have very few humans that I would spend 10 hours in a car with.
I do this pretty regularly. This is not a new thing for me.
Okay, sure. So the honorable mention, Darksteel Citadel.
Yeah, Darksteel Citadel is a really busted Magic card. It has type artifact, which is really the only relevant thing on the card outside of the fact that it's indestructible. And
indestructible is a real thing.
Yeah, people playing Stone Ring get sad sometimes, but the point of the matter is that it has type artifact. And in Modern, there is a card called Mox Opal that may or may not be one of the best cards in the entire format that really wants you to have artifacts in play, and it wants you to have them in play on turn 1 so that you can get extra mana immediately. And Darksteel Citadel is just one of the best ways you can possibly do that in the format. Goes really, really good with Mox Opal. On its own merits, the land is not close to this top 10 list, but it makes honorable mention just because of its synergy with Mox Opal.
Alright, hear me out. Boom Bust.
I mean, that's sweet. That is sweet. But there are a lot of good lands in Modern, man. And, yeah.
Agreed. Not only lands, but lands that kill lands.
Oh, those are the best kind.
The real deal Holyfield of the top 8. Lands that kill other lands. Laid out.
Yeah, so coming in at number 8, we have Field of Ruin and Ghost Quarter. And, it may seem cheating to kind of combine them, but they serve the same purpose. Through Modern's history, it's kind of Ghost Quarter was just all the way here because Field of Ruin really wasn't really printed until about a couple months ago. But ever since it's been printed, Field of Ruin has kind of supplanted Ghost Quarter as the land destruction spell of choice. But the fact that they're colorless, you can kind of put them in any land. They answer problem lands in decks that have trouble answering those. And, they trade with some of the cards above them that are on this list that are much better than these cards. So, they're really powerful. They disrupt synergies. They can turn off some spell lands that may or may not have made the list, and that can take over games. I remember when I first started getting into Modern, you always wanted to save your Ghost Core to get that Gavany Township out of Birthing Pod. So,
Gavany Township.
that is a good land.
It's a good land.
May or may not be on the list. We'll see.
Yes. So the next two are sort of related. And we don't have Ancient Tomb. We do have the next two entrants.
Okay, so at number 7, we had Eldrazi Temple. Eldrazi Temple is more of a newcomer to Modern in the sense that it's kind of been in Modern almost the entire history of Modern. But it was never good up until Oath of the Gatewatch. But as soon as Thought Not Seer and Reality Smasher and Matter Reshaper got printed, this card became a powerhouse. It is... I mean, it's great. It was partly responsible for Eldrazi Winter. It's still played in decks. There's decks that use Ancient Stirrings just to find it. 2 mana from 1 land is insane. It just is too good, mostly. So, when it's casting good creatures, this card is busted. And it is maybe a little low on this list for some people's likings, but the card itself is just so degenerate. If you've ever had the turn 2 Thought Not Seer cast against you, you know what's up.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. But even worse than turn 2 Thought Not Seer, we have, coming in number 6, the Tron lands. That's right, we have all of them. And, yep, if you don't like turn 2 Thought Not Seer, you definitely don't like turn 3 Karn. That is just...
Oh, man. There's this comic that I saw floating around. I'll try and remember to post it. There's like these... It's just a little like Foursquare comic, and it's just like birds. And it's like the first panel is this bird, and he's like, "Man, I can't wait to try out this new brew." And then the second panel is like a big crow comes in, and he's like, "Turn 1 Urza's Mine, turn 2 power plant."
Yeah.
And then the next panel is just going, turn 3 Urza's Tower, Karn liberated, get wrecked.
Yep.
And then the fourth panel is the first bird looking despondent while the other bird is screaming at the top of his lungs, "GG, get wrecked." easy games. And it's quite good. Quite good.
Oh, and it's a common experience in Modern if you've ever played the format, because Tron lands have been powering out busted colorless spells since the format started. They're great. They're still a tier 1 strategy today, and they're just so good. 3 mana from 1 land is just unreasonable. Just one of the best cards in Vintage. One that's warping the format in half just makes 3 mana from 1 land. The effect is too powerful, simply put. I mean, obviously, this one requires some setup. It requires some work, but when you put those things together and you have those things, they're too good. And they're not number 1 on the list, but making the top 8 list of lands in Modern with some of the other contenders for this list is pretty insane. So, yeah,
quite strong. So we've got lands that kill lands that make more than 1 mana, and now we have lands that turn into cards.
Yeah, lands that become not lands, essentially.
Yes.
So, coming in at number 5 on the list, we have Horizon Canopy. This is one of the more I'm blanking on the word. Subtle looking lands, I guess. It doesn't look that powerful, and I've had newer players tell me that they don't think the land's very good. It always damages them. They're not entirely sure why it costs so much money. And then you play with this card, and you realize that it really is just that good. There are, mono white decks in the format that play Horizon Canopy as just a plains that always pains them. There are green decks that play Horizon Canopy with no white mana in the deck. I've seen Tron play Horizon Canopy in the deck just as a tutor target even.
I was
Scryings.
very close to putting Horizon Canopy and Green White Tron.
It probably should have been in there because Horizon Canopy, as it turns out, is just too good. There is a reason they didn't give it to blue, although it's arguably better in green than blue, but there's a reason they completed some of the future land cycles and they never completed this one. This land is just too good. When you are flooding and you have all of your mana, fixed up and you're ready to go and you want to cast a spell, being able to turn a land into another card is just so powerful. It's like when you're top decking, you're playing against, like a grindy creature mirror. When you're top decking, even in limited, like you're top decking, you draw a land, it's like, gosh, I just missed my turn. I just got time walk because I drew a land, I don't get to do anything. And it's like, well, if you drew Horizon Canopy, that doesn't happen. You just get to you get the redraw, you get that another shot at it. And it can feel like time walk in those scenarios. And the fact that it fixes 2 colors is just busted. When you're playing green-white decks, it's so strong. And you can tutor for it with, Knight of the Reliquary. You can bring it back with Crucible Worlds and the Crucible Creature. Ramming Up Excavator. Yeah, this card is just too good.
The absolute core of the modern formats. I'm a little surprised these are this low.
Yeah, this one was hotly contested in our car ride home. We have Shocklands coming in at number 4. And there's a lot of debate. Shocks fetches, where do they go on the list? Are Shocklands better than Horizon Canopy? Are they better than Tron lands? I think the answer is yes. They are just, untapped dual lands at any point in the game, essentially, that you can get off of fetch lands, have formed the backbone of modern mana bases since the format's inception. It's a, kind of archetypal strategy that's copied in Legacy with actual duels, but, these are worse, obviously, but they still just make up so many decks in Modern. There's so many decks that wouldn't be possible without these existing. They definitely have downsides. The fact that you have to lose life to get them untapped means most decks will only play a few of them and, have to manage. It's one of the hallmarks of the format is managing them correctly. But they're insanely powerful, obviously, but I do think there are three cards above them in terms of strength in the format.
All right. The third one, Poisonous Boy.
Yeah. Coming in number 3, we have Inkmoth Nexus. Now, this is a spot that I think a lot of people might be shocked about. I think you could make the argument that this one goes higher. This card is subtly just insanely good. It's simply put too good. It almost single-handedly turns Affinity from a good and resilient deck that, would probably still be pretty good, but probably tier 2 to just tier 1 the entire history of Modern, essentially. The fact that it gets around so many counters to aggro decks that other, strategies might employ, like life gain and, maybe like blockers on the ground, there's just... It's basically like a flying double striking 1/1 that costs 1 mana to activate on a colorless land that enters untapped that they can't gain life again from. Like, the infect mechanic has just been too good. It was a powerhouse in Modern for essentially the entire time New Phyrexia has been legal. And Inkmoth Nexus is just the best of the things. It goes in any deck that wants to infect. It's absurd with pump spells. It's absurd with a cranial plating on it. Good enough to see play in Legacy. Good enough that people will crop rotation for it in Legacy. This card is insane.
Yep, card's great. Let's see who edged it out for runner up. Oh yeah. Ye olde uncounterable creature spells.
Yeah, coming in number 2, we have Cavern of Souls, which this is one that we got some wild reactions on where it was like, well, maybe this is way too high. Maybe it's not high enough. The fact that it fixes 5 colors in the decks it's in is already very good. The fact that it does it pain-free is probably too good. And then the fact that you just get it's also uncounterable for almost no reason stapled on makes it just simply put a card that shouldn't be printed. I can't tell you how many times I've been playing against a humans player that just played a cavern and played their creature, and you had all these plans and these cryptic commands and these logic knots and all these things you were going to do, and now those just aren't happening anymore. It's so good that Eldrazi plays copies of this card in a deck where they can't even use the colored mana it makes just to make their spells uncounterable. As a tutor target, they'll go do that. It goes in decks like Amulet Bloom that will tutor for it to make their giants uncounterable. It's won a lot of GPs in that deck. It's won a lot of events in humans. It's too good. In Standard, it was casting Thragtusk to many people's avail. It is, it is a headache to play against Cavern of Souls. It really is.
Gotta play some unsubstantiates.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how many times I've been blown out by this card.
Yeet. Alright, so what was the 10-hour consensus?
Well, I think, no shock to anybody, the number one land, or lands in this case, in Modern, is the fetches. They just are that good. Fetch lands are 5-color fixing lands that come to play untapped, give you untapped mana, all at the cost of 1 life. They're universally regarded as a mistake, just too powerful. They really are that good. There's not too much you need to say about it. They define the format. They're broken with, cantrip deck manipulation spells. If you've ever seen anybody play Courser of Krufus with fetches, you kind of understand the power. And even when they don't, they give you so many options. They're instant speed. They protect from Ghost Quarter. In this format, they often can even make 1/1s by getting Dryad Arbors. They're too good.
I don't know if often is. When that happens, but
it's often in the decks that play Dryad Arbor. If you ever played against Inkmoth or Boggles
in the deck,
like, I'm gonna get my Liliana the Veil. I'm gonna get this Boggle, and they fetch for it. Infect played it for a long time too. This won a lot of events in Infect.
Okay, sure.
Where they, you got to protect against Lily. Maybe you want to get something to suit up end of turn they weren't ready for. And it's just all because fetches are too good. They are broken. They're broken every format they're legal in. They were a pain when they got reprinted into Standard. They are just that good.
Standard, they were nonsense in Standard.
Correct.
Everything was a 4-color good stuff deck.
Yeah, they're just too good.
And yeep. All right. So,
we had some cards left off of this list. I think there was a lot of debate on, well, maybe Celestial Colonnade should have been in here. Maybe Raging Ravine should have been in here. Maybe, we mentioned Gavany Township. That's a card that definitely could have made this list. That's a very powerful card. But I think the list is right for now. But feel free to debate us on Twitter. Hit us up. Tell us if we're wrong.
Don't debate me. Debate him.
That's fair.
Before we get to the Spice Rack, you can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Thoughtseize, all spelled out. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at T1Thoughtseize. Zach is at A22EN. You can watch a stream at twitch.tv/T1Thoughtseize, sponsored by Card Hoarder. You can see our YouTube videos at youtube.com/Thoughtseize, all spelled out. You can read my columns at blog.cardkingdom.com. You can become a member of the Thoughtseize Cabal at patreon.com/Turn1Thoughtseize, all spelled out. And, of course, you can see all of our content on turn1thoughtseize.com. You picked the Spice Rack card for this week. Tell me about...
Silence?
Yeah. See what I did there?
Yeah, the 4 effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our Spice Rack is Silence. The card says that for 1 white mana, it's an instant, and it says your opponents can't cast spells this turn. So
Wait, is it opponent or opponents?
Your
Ooh.
opponents can't cast spells this turn.
Ah.
So this card is an awful card in the abstract. It's not one I would recommend just putting in any white deck, but it is starting to creep into KCI lists as the I need to buy one turn kind of their Angel's Grace, if you will. That also serves the dual role of, you can just cast this on your turn against the blue deck, and they have to counter it, otherwise they definitely aren't countering the next spell. So, it's starting to creep into KCI list for them to buy turns. It is very, very powerful if you have the sort of I'm going to win the game thing happening next. It is the type of spell a lot of decks could employ if they are looking to buy exactly one turn, which is all it's really good at, but it does that very well.
There was for a little bit of time. I guess it still technically exists. Like, Isochron Scepter is still legal. So
you can play Isochron Scepter in silence.
Technically, Scepter Control is a deck that you could register in a modern event. I will say, if you can stick this on a silence and protect it and have it stay in play, it's very good.
Yeah.
Just opponent never cast spells again. So, something to consider if you have run out of like janky artifact-based decks that you want to play. Look up an old Scepter Control list and see all of the wonderful things that you can put on Isochron Scepter. It's more than you would think.
Yeah, I mean, Isochron Scepter's sweet. I've registered in SCGs.
Yeah, recently. Past 6 months.
Correct. Yep.
Yeet. Nailed it. Alright, kids, that is what we've got for the evening. Yeah, we'll catch up with you next time.
Love you guys.